Ambassador Philip Verveer, U.S. Coordinator for International Communications and Information Policy, State Department. Kathryn Brown, Senior Vice President, Public Policy Development and Corporate Responsibility, Verizon. Marc Vanheukelen, Head of Cabinet for EU Trade, Commissioner Karel de Gucht, and Christine Bliss, Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Services and Investment. The rapporteur for this panel is Shirley Ann George, Vice Chair of the Canadian Services Coalition. Ladies and gentlemen, Dorothy Dwoskin.
So thank you very much. I hope everybody didn't eat too much at lunch so that nobody falls asleep during our panel this afternoon. This morning we talked a lot about architecture and positive and negative lists. What we wanted to do this afternoon was to talk about services as the enabler for the rest of the economy. Just a few words about our panelists that I just wanted to point out. Koomen from IBM Australia and New Zealand, also a board member of the Australian Services Roundtable, one of our very important sponsors of this event. Kaaren has a wealth of experience on trade and industry issues. Ambassador Phil Verveer, who is Deputy Assistant Secretary and U.S. Coordinator for International Communications and Information Policy at State. He has one incredible resume, although I think the bios that I can pull off the Bing are more interesting. Ambassador, about some of your past exploits. He's been really a fantastic partner for the industry, and we're very grateful that he's here. Kathy Brown, Senior VP for Public Policy and Corporate Responsibility at Verizon. Kathy is widely recognized as a legend, a thought leader, and someone who can really cut to the chase and talking about the issues for the telecom sector. We're delighted to be joined by Marc Vanheukelen, who is currently the Chief of Staff for EU Trade Commissioner de Gucht. I guess he's got a gas card here already. Marc has had a very distinguished career in the Commission, and he's one of those rare finds in trade policy. He's actually has played a role as a chief economist, so he can make the economic arguments about why services is important. And finally, Christine Bliss, who is Assistant Trade Representative for Service and Investment. Christine has a long career at USTR, but she's been an advocate for trade issues, working on the Hill and also in the private sector. And she's the one that has to put the TPP, the ISA, and the HLWG report together to make sure all these things fit together. So we agreed for this panel that we wanted really to have a conversation about the importance of cross-border trade and data flows. I think we probably all come at this from perhaps different perspectives. We don't have a lot of data, but the data that we do have for the U.S. shows that, for example, ICT-enabled services account for about 61% of U.S. exports and about 56% of services imports. Globally, the numbers aren't as reliable, but what we do know from what the OECD has done shows that services and ICT-enabled services are actually very important. So we have a couple goals. One is really to shed some light on the data flow issues and where this may fit in the trade agenda, and drawing on some of our experiences. Really to focus on how businesses are contending with the issues in the here and now, what they're doing as customers and providers and dealing with the concerns. The relationship with the discussions with government and lessons learned on this 21st century issue, and the experience with trade negotiations to date. There have been a lot of topics like non-discrimination, free flow of information. We heard a lot about localization of computing facilities, and the comprehensive coverage of internet-enabled services, the treatment of SOEs and incumbents. So if I could start, Kaaren, with you. For many companies, and perhaps you can comment on whether this is just for ICT. This is sort of the key issue going forward. Can you give us just a business perspective about what this means in terms of addressing customer and business needs and what companies...
As Dorothy mentioned, today I'm representing the Australian Services Roundtable. So we're the peak industry body that represents Australian engineers and architects and the financial services providers, the consultants, education service providers who are our third largest export. And in all of these industries, in all of these sectors, what is actually being traded is information. It's human capital, it's intellectual capital, and it's information. And none of our businesses in the services sector can operate without an exchange of these things, without exchanging that data. And so our trade issue is that there are restrictions emerging on the transfer of data and where the data can be hosted. And this particularly affects small companies who are being hampered by emerging rules about whether they can whether they need to host data in particular locations, or whether they can move the data in and out as their business requires it. So we're very keen to have an agreement, a practical agreement that does have binding commitments and is clear and is as clear as possible about what is permitted and what isn't permitted. And it was not permitted, a clearly identified, non-discriminatory, transparent set of rules. Because without that, the services sector in all countries, whether developed or developing economies, cannot prosper. And particularly for those in Australia that are small and looking to grow. We are an island. We need trade, and e-commerce presents the best opportunity for Australian businesses to overcome the tyranny of distance that we've suffered from for so long. So it is critically important to us.
Thanks very much. So, Kathy, you have a lot of experience on these issues. If you could maybe help us dig in a little bit more deeply on some of the specific issues that you see in business. I think what we're trying to do is make this a little real for folks who don't eat and sleep data flows everyday life.
So let me try and paint you a little picture. I call our networks the trade routes of the 21st century. Why do I say that? What is the internet? Let's start there. And then we talk about what Verizon is there. 40,000 networks going across the world. 425,000 different global routes. 600 million websites. Verizon is in 159 countries. We are running big, fat pipes full of what? Data, really commerce, under the oceans and to all the continents of the world. 485,000 route miles. Your data is traveling from place to place to place. Who is that? What's happening here? We have, I think, almost all of the Fortune 500 companies who are moving data. We used to call those goods and services. It's all now in bits across the world, between themselves and between their own customers, between and among them. So let me paint just a couple of pictures here so you see what I'm talking about. Who are our customers? In this part of our network, you know us here in the U.S., those of you who are in the U.S., we know we are a wireless carrier, we are a wireless provider, we are a fiber provider, we provide video here in the U.S. Abroad, what we're doing is providing the business-to-business connections that make the economy do what it does. Banks, financial services industry, auto industry, back office business, data industries, publishing industries. All of those folks, multinational in nature, who then employ people, produce goods and services in countries all over the world. An example, one of our customers, and I won't use names just because maybe they don't want me to, business process customer delivers on-demand accounts payable, invoicing services, and other business processes to 100,000 corporations across 100 countries in numerous currencies and 17 languages. I want you to see the picture of what's happening here. Car manufacturer. We built for that manufacturer new fully managed global communications services, data centers, that cloud thing we'll talk about in a minute, IT platforms so that between and among the factories, the places where the car is sold and where their employees are, there is a seamless network. A publishing company. They use us, Verizon, to do an integrated networking solution amongst and between their publishers, their authors, and where they deliver the books. 55 publishing houses in 20 countries. This is what global commerce looks like now. It is running around the world in bits over networks and being stored in data centers, which we now call the cloud. Data centers have always been around the world. That's where the bits go, where the companies access them, and from which they do their business. The cloud, of which we now own a company called Terramar, does beyond the data center for individual companies, aggregates this enormous storage capacity so that data can be anywhere and it can be accessed anywhere. So think healthcare, think education, think back office services anywhere. Why is it so important that we not put up barriers across borders? Because data is borderless. These networks are borderless. They're international networks that then deliver traffic to national networks. And there is a hodgepodge of regulation. There's a hodgepodge of interests. Some is already regulated. Some parts of this network are not. In trade language, they sit in different categories. And it's important that we see the world the way it is now. So while we need infrastructure for new ships and planes, if we look at where commerce is running, it's running over these networks. And if we want to think about 21st century trade policy, we need to think and understand how commerce is moving around the world.
Great.